Hello? Rescue hooks to rescue, Mayday! Get ahead, West. Fast Mayday, what's your location? Get the hell out of here, hurry up! We need radio silence, baby. Water in that 2.5-inch line. 48 inch water in a 2.5-inch line. The rope. 35 in the rear, 35 in the rear.
Welcome to the Emergency Traffic Podcast. Hello again from the Emergency Traffic Podcast, where we review firefighter line of duty deaths through official reports to discuss and learn from these tragic events. Welcome to episode number 61 of season 3. My co-host Denis and I will review the 2012 incident that occurred in Chicago, Illinois, where a captain was killed during a rapid fire progression event in a 2.5-story multiple family dwelling. I want to just take a moment now to thank all of our listeners and followers. We appreciate your time and interest. Please like and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or your favorite podcasting app. Thank you for listening, and please tell a friend. Now, here we go. Hello, Denis. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Paul. How are you?
Good.
I'm regretting not having put up a wind turbine.
Oh, paying for power. Is it cold there?
The hell with solar cells.
Oh, the solar.
It hasn't stopped blowing here since the 1st of November. When I say blowing, I mean 75 kilometer an hour blowing.
Oh, wow.
Day and night hasn't stopped.
Oh,
it blew so hard. I have a propane bullet outside. A bullet.
Yeah,
It lifted the big steel cover off the bullet.
No kidding.
No kidding. I've never seen that. It's been through 2 hurricanes that never did that.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, it's been remarkably calm here, actually, in Western Canada now that, hasn't been very windy for a long time. I was thinking of that the other day, actually. So it'll come, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Anyway.
Well, unfortunately, Doug was going to join us today, but he got called in for an overtime shift, and Dirk and Zach were busy. So it's just Statler and Waldorf again. Okay. We've got kind of
lucky you guys.
Yeah, right. Lucky listeners. Let's see. So some of the stuff that's happened in the past little while is current events. There's a lot of talk going on about NFPA report that just came out. They've been looking at there's been quite a few push by local councils to build taller single-stair multifamily buildings, circumventing current codes process, similar to combustible panel problems. That's what happened in the UK when they put all these panels on. They didn't follow the codes process.
Exterior cladding you're talking about.
Exterior cladding, yeah. So Seattle has already passed a law that they can have single-stair buildings, and BC has passed a law or modified legislation to allow single stairs in up to 6-story buildings. And the big problem here, of course, is that it's not following the codes process, which gets all the stakeholders involved. It's not just some initiative. And these initiatives are to increase density, build more density in a smaller place, without the second stairway. NFPA just did a report on a conference they held a few weeks ago about this, and so that report is available online. They are going to commission the Fire Research Institute to do more study on it and stuff like that. So it's just something to be aware of. There's been a lot of talk about that online.
Some of the problem, of course, is the interest groups. I was going to call them special interest groups, but I'm not sure that's correct. But interest groups who want this kind of stuff feel that the code making process is red tape and takes too long. But unfortunately, really, I think you need to hear all sides of the story. And really, sadly, it'll be probably years before we see whether this was a good decision or a bad decision.
Yeah, I mean, there are similar buildings in other countries. Even the Seattle, at this NFPA conference they had the doctor from Seattle talking about it. And they said, yes, we made this law for Seattle, but Seattle's an ISO Class 1 department. They have ample staffing, ample equipment, all that kind of stuff. If that happens in my little town here of Lacombe, for us to be able to ladder from the outside a 6-story building, well, we got one aerial that's here. The next aerial is 40 minutes away or 30 minutes away. if you can get on those sides with trucks. We don't own a ladder more than 35 feet long. All these problems that play into this, like you say, it'll be years before we know if it's a good move or not. But
Yeah. My gut tells me it's not.
yeah, not only for the citizens to get out, but for the firefighters to be able to fight the fire effectively. The other thing that I saw came across my social media feed, the Ontario Firefighter Certification Grant, which awards departments that are unable, and it says this specifically, if you're unable to staff a truck full time and have less than 75 firefighters, the grant was $400,000 in 2022, $200K in 23, $150K in 24. So, and it's not government funded; it's actually charitable organization that's raising this money to fund it. Because I made a comment on the social saying, "Oh, it's like Alberta has a similar grant. They had $500,000 for all any fire department can apply in Alberta, which I think Dirk did the math one day. It worked out to $20 a head or something for firefighters, but not much for
It's
training.
for
But
staffing, right? Is that the idea? Or?
no, this is for training.
Okay.
Yeah, just to extra training. You want to take a 1041 course, or you want to take a 1035 course, or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, or an officer
Something else
course.
was in the news lately that kind of grabbed my attention was that multiple fatality Tesla accident. Did you remember that one, where there was somebody was trapped inside? 5 people were trapped inside, and they couldn't get out because the door locks weren't working, the door latches weren't working because they're electrically powered, and there was a bus driver or somebody broke a window and
Postal employee, I think.
broke the rear window and got one person out, but the other 4 died in the crash.
Yeah, used a metal pole that was in the vicinity somewhere to crash through the laminated glass, and the person just self extricated right away once the window was broken. And apparently, I've looked at some investigation reports. So the electric doors, there are manual overrides according to Tesla. The front ones are on the door somewhere, but the rear door manual overrides are under the floor mats in the back, which of course your passengers would never know, and even if they could reach them, there's no way to get out, basically.
Drivers don't even know where the parking brake handle is.
Yeah, it's just insane. But yeah, that was another good news story, and that's not the only. There was another fatal Tesla fire accident as well, somewhere in North America, the same, around the same week. So
yeah,
so
I don't think these incidents with Teslas go to the fact that they're EVs or Teslas. I think it goes more to the fact that they're non-traditional automotive. So they're trying new technology, and the old technology, of course, has been developed over years, and lots of people died developing older technologies. Finding solutions, right?
The seatbelt on the plane. Why is the seatbelt on the plane still the old lever type mechanism? They don't want to change it because every plane is the same. And that way everybody knows how to do it. It's not a different button, because every car you get into now, the seatbelt actuator is something different,
Sure.
it seems.
Can you imagine you called an Uber and it was electric, similar to the Tesla, and you got in the back? What do you know about that car? Nothing.
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Yeah.
And what do you want to know about that car? How to get out.
Yeah. How to get out is right. Where's the exit and how do I open it? Yeah. Also, an interesting one that Denis had brought up was Baltimore last week. And I think I saw it on social media. So if you remember back in 2022, January 22, we did an episode on this, the Stricker Street fire in Baltimore, where 3 or 4 firefighters lost their lives in a vacant building in a row house. It was a row house of buildings. The last 2 end units were vacant. There'd been fires in the building before. And anyway, one of the items that came out of the report is Baltimore, a few years before, had a program to mark a vacant abandoned buildings with with a X on the outside, so firefighters would know that this is a vacant building and it may be dangerous, etc., condemned. And Baltimore had discontinued the program due to lack of funds to buy the signs, believe it or not. And so they had discontinued the program. 5 years later, 3-4 firefighters are killed in a fire. So in the report that was brought up, and Baltimore has re-implemented that program. Well, lo and behold, Baltimore City responded to a fire in one of these buildings last week, but there was the X sign on the door saying don't go in, and they kept everybody defensive, and no firefighters were injured. So that's the thing, is that we need a way to deal with, of course, Baltimore and many urban areas, Detroit and stuff like that. There's thousands and thousands of vacant dwellings that, are just sitting there, and many of them are made to burn.
Yeah.
So that was interesting.
And even this week's episode, at the time, the building next door was partially boarded up.
Yeah, exactly. And so how do you know? So speaking of this week's episode, on November 2nd of 2012, a 54-year-old male career captain sustained injuries at a 2.5-story apartment building fire, and he died in a local hospital. The fire occurred only a few blocks from the victim's fire station. This is sort of a unique call because even Denis, when he was reviewing it, going, they didn't do a lot of stuff wrong in this call. The recommendations aren't specific. The only thing it really points out is one was flow path control. So, like I told Denny before, they didn't follow slicers; they followed Recio, and resulted in a heavy fire event. Even though the firefighter died from exposure to that heavy fire in medical conditions. Anyway, have a listen, see if it maybe will apply to us. And there is some links online. I'll put them in the socials that you can go and watch a animated video that the National Institute of Science and Technology did, simulation and the flow path of this fire.
So we're going to start off by describing the fire department. So this is Chicago, and the fire department involved has 98 stations with 4,300 uniformed members, and they serve a population at the time, so this is 12 years ago, of about 2.8 million within an area of about 228 square miles. So big department, big city. So department members assigned to the operations division work a 24 on, 48 hour off shift schedule with 3 shift platoons, so 1 on, 2 off. The department operates 24 battalions in 5 divisions. The fire department currently has 96 engine companies, 61 truck companies, 4 squads, which are 2 pieces. There's a heavy rescue company and I think it's a snorkel or something that goes with it. And there's 2 marine boats. There's 2 helicopters, plus there's various support apparatus for high-rise, hazmat incidents, and special operations. In addition to fire suppression, they do hazmat mitigation and special operations response. So, claps, rescues, that kind of thing. They operate an EMS division also, which has 12 BLS, basic life support ambulances, and 59 ALS ambulances. And some of the firefighting staff is cross-trained. And they have support staff, including EMS field officers. Also, the fire department operates aircraft rescue ARF division at 2 of the airports within the city. O'Hare, and what's the other one, Paul? But anyway.
Oh, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I've
Sorry.
probably been in there, but anyway,
Yeah.
My apologies. Yeah. The fire department has well-documented written policies and procedures that are consistent with the requirements of NFPA 1500, which is a standard on fire department occupational safety and health program. A good read, actually, for those of you who are not familiar with it, particularly sections 4.1 and 8.8. And these are available to all the fire department members at each station and in all fire department offices. So everybody has access to these policies. Policies and procedures on the incident command system are there. There's stuff on engine company operations, truck company operations, SCBA and personal protective equipment use, Mayday procedures, radio use, rapid intervention teams, and other topics are in those SOPs. The fire department has a training facility also. The fire department's training academy literature includes training materials related to bowstring truss construction, doesn't apply in this case, and lightweight truss construction, and steel bar truss construction, none of which apply to this particular incident. But they're all specialties that have taken firefighters' lives in the past, so that's why they're there. The fire department is rated as a Class 2 ISO Class 2 department, which is only 1 notch down from the best. So a little bit about the training and experience of the members involved. Beginning in August 2010, the Illinois Office of the State Fire Marshal implemented new minimum certification standards for all firefighters in the state that meet or exceed the requirements of NFPA 1001, which is the standard on firefighter professional qualifications. And in that standard, there's 2 levels, Firefighter 1 and Firefighter 2. So this career department, which is Chicago, enacted requirements that exceeded these state requirements. Their new certifications included a basic operations firefighter, which they abbreviated as a BOF, and an advanced technician firefighter, which they abbreviated as ATF. That replaced the current Firefighter 1 and Firefighter 2 categories, respectively. So there is a 5-year transition period during which firefighters may certify to either standard. Certification as a basic operations firefighter requires at least the following: successful completion of the BOF course, successful completion of a minimum 180 instructional hours in that curriculum, passage of the state written exam and the state practical skills examinations, completion of the classroom portion of the fire vehicle operations certification. And beginning in 2011, the fire department required all new hires to successfully complete the entire certification program. So sooner, so they weren't grandfathered into this time period. So a successful completion of our hazardous materials at the operations level certification, about 56 hours. Successful completion of a technical rescue at the awareness level certification, about 8 hours. Certification in CPR, and then in the review it said NIMS 100 and 700, but really that's ICS 100, which is intro to ICS, and IS 700, which is the intro to NIMS.
They use ICS to work within National Incident Management System. Like Ontario now has Ontario Incident Management, and now Alberta has AIMS, Alberta Incident Management System.
Yep. Then completion of the National Fallen Firefighters Courage to be Safe course, which is really just an awareness level. It's like a one hour online thing. So the fire department operates its own recruit training academy that recruits attend for at least the first 6 months of employment, and that exceeds state requirements. In addition to completing the basic operations firefighter certification requirements, recruits then receive approximately 150 additional hours of firefighter training at the academy. Each recruit must also complete instructions in emergency medical services and be certified as a state of Illinois EMT basic. So an EMTB for those who are familiar with that terminology. After completing the recruit training, each probationary firefighter is assigned to a company. Firefighters are required to participate in at least 2 hours of training per work shift. So remember, that's 1 in every 3 days. All pump operators in the fire department hold a career service rank of fire engineer, for which they must pass competitive written and practical examinations. So it's not promotion on service; it's competitive. So ladder and truck operators are referred to as drivers. All fire engineers are given an additional 70 hours of instruction upon promotion and assignment to the field. Beginning in 2005, the fire department instituted a new requirement whereby new company officers receive 4 weeks of training that include Management 1, Tactics 1, Instructor 1, and 1 week of departmental officer orientation and management training. In 2011, this training was expanded to 5 weeks and covers the entire curriculum of NFPA 1021, which is a standard for fire officer professional qualifications. Upon promotion to the rank of captain, all officers receive an additional 2 weeks of managerial, tactical, and incident management instruction. Upon promotion to battalion chief, all officers receive again an additional 3 weeks of managerial, tactical, and incident management instruction, which includes ride-along time and operations with an experienced battalion chief. Pretty extensive officer training program. Not all that common, just saying.
Really good. Yeah, you're right. That is awesome that they push all that training on their team, and it's not just in-house stuff. They actually validate it by using a recognized standard
and good for
stuff
them.
like that.
And this is
really
12
good.
years ago, guys.
Yeah, Chicago's really hurting in the equipment side these days. I've been seeing a bunch of posts. The next part of this is talking about the equipment and personnel. So the department involved in this investigation provide 2 basic responses for reports of structure fires, which are either a still alarm or a still and box alarm. The alarm office will dispatch a still alarm assignment to initial reports of a structure fire. The still alarm dispatch sends out 2 engine companies, 2 truck companies, and a battalion chief. If the alarm office receives additional reports of a fire or a company arrives on scene and reports a working fire, then a squad company, which was 2 units, a rescue and another device of some sort, a command van, a RIT complement will be dispatched, which is probably another engine. If the report of a fire is isolated in a squad company's first due area, approximately 40 blocks, then the squad company is automatically sent to that call. In 2002, the department implemented procedures for a RIT response in which a truck company and a battalion chief are dispatched to and designated as Rapid Intervention Team. On every working fire, a RIT response is comprised of a truck company, a battalion chief, an ALS ambulance, and an EMS field officer, so like an extra supervisor or such in a command vehicle. Additionally, the department has procedures for a Mayday response, which follows closely with the RIT response. In the event a Mayday is transmitted, protocol requires a still alarm to be upgraded to a still in box. If a Mayday is transmitted and a still in box alarm, the incident is upgraded to a second alarm, basically. Per department procedures, the following companies were dispatched to the initial report of this structure fire through to the time of the Mayday. So the still alarm is initially how it came in. Engine 123 with the captain who was the victim in this call, the engineer, and 3 firefighters. So they had a staffing of 5. The tower ladder, 39, lieutenant, driver, and 2 firefighters. So staffing of 4. Note this company was riding 1 firefighter short, which is referred to as a variance in Chicago. Engine 49, lieutenant, engineer, 2 firefighters, also on variance. Truck 33, captain, driver, 3 firefighters. Battalion Chief 19, and the incident. Who is the incident?
That's
commander.
19 total, just counting on my fingers here.
Okay, excellent, great. I usually put that in here, and I didn't. Red alarm. Truck 52 was responded. Lieutenant, driver, 3 firefighters. Squad 5, lieutenant, and 5 firefighters. The squad consisted of a heavy rescue and a 55-foot snorkel. The staffing includes an officer and 3 firefighters on the heavy rescue and 2 firefighters on the snorkel. Also a battalion chief who came as the RIT chief, ambulance A19 with 2 paramedics, and then unit 455, which was the field officer and a command van. So they had a place.
31 firefighters and 3 EMTs.
That's a good response.
So a little bit about the PPE involved. At the time of the incident, the victim was wearing his structural firefighter turnout pants, coat, boots, and helmet. Victor was wearing an SCBA and was found with his face piece on. It's not clear whether his pass device was sounding or not. We'll find out later that there were some pieces of his PPE that were missing at the time of the incident. The NIOSH investigators inspected the SCBA and turnout gear worn by the victim. He was carrying a radio at the time of the incident. So, which is interesting because the fire department's standard operating procedure is to design only 3 radios for each truck company and squad company. The officer and driver engineer carry radios, so there's 2 of them, and the 3rd radio is assigned during roll call at the beginning of each work shift to a firefighter based upon their assigned duties for the work shift. So the other 2 firefighters do not have radios. Duties requiring a firefighter to carry a radio could include a hydrant firefighter on engine companies, ventilation or forcible entry firefighter, roof ventilation firefighter, elevator management at high-rise fires, so the guy up in the hoist room, search and rescue, and other truck company duties. So at the time of this investigation, the fire department was awaiting delivery of a large quantity of radios that would in the end equip every firefighter with a portable radio, which it's pretty much considered the standard now, I would say, although there's departments, and we keep seeing them in these reviews, that don't have radios for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Each engine and truck company carries a thermal imager. The thermal imagers were used during the initial size up and fire suppression at this incident. The weather at the time of the incident was mostly cloudy, with an approximate temperature of 45 degrees Fahrenheit and a relative humidity of 62%. So at the time of this incident, it would have been dark too, or just gone dark. The wind was out of the northeast at approximately 10 miles per hour. So the northeast puts the wind on the Alpha Bravo corner of this incident. So blowing on the front door, and that's going to be important.
Yep, this is why we're doing this one, because it's basically flow path related. The structure in this incident, like the one we did the last episode, was also a very old structure. It was a 2.5 story.
I was going to say that they describe it here as a 2.5 story, but it's a raised 2.5 story, and it's a walk up. So there's like three quarters of the basement is out of the ground. So it's a tall 2.5 story.
That's what's making it look different in the pictures. Yeah, I kind of wonder about that. You're right, because it's much taller than the 2.5 story.
It's like a walk up, right?
Yeah.
So where the basement is only partially in the ground. So that becomes important also when they get around to the Charlie side.
Absolutely, because it's at a different grade. It was built in 1896. Approximately, it's only 17 feet wide by 57 feet long, and totaled about 2,000 square feet per floor. The structure had a ground level apartment, a second floor apartment, and an attic or half story housing. The hot water heater for the structure was in that attic as well. Not sure why that's relevant, but the structure was constructed with balloon framing system with a wood gable roof system. The exterior of the structure was vinyl sided over the original wood planking with oriented strand board or OSB sheathing in some areas. The roof was asphalt shingles over wood planking. The interior floors consisted primarily of carpet over wood plank with ceramic tile in the entryways. Interior walls were 2 by 4 inch wood frame covered with half-inch gypsum board, and second floor ceiling had multiple layers with small void spaces in it. So it had been
Yeah, originally lath and plaster, and then it had been boarded out or furred out and then boarded again.
The attic actually had OSB decking on the floor, so they could be in there to put the service the utilities and stuff that were up in the attic. The structure showed evidence of prior substantial renovation work with updated doors and windows. The rear porch area, typical in northeastern United States, or I guess that's Midwest, really, Chicago, was closed in with wood plank covered by foam board and vinyl siding provided, which also provided a stairwell to the second floor and the attic. So had an outside porch before, and they closed it in for extra interior space in the building, which also incorporated the stairway. Upon arrival, the firefighters found a traditional-looking 2.5-story construction house with a basement, which Denny had pointed out. The basement really wasn't below grade very much. A covered wooden front porch.
I was going to say that porch was full width. They went the full width, and along the sidewalk there was a wrought iron fence with gates with locks.
And you could see you kind of went up the steps to the porch because that basement had lookout windows in the bottom, and you could see the lookout windows actually under that porch with the three windows boarded up on each
So
on
why
each
this is
level.
important, of course, because it all adds to the number of lengths of hose you need to get in there. You got to
Yep,
get around the
exactly.
fence. You got to
The
get up the
exterior,
stairs. You got to get across the porch.
yep. The exterior appeared to be clapboard or vinyl siding, which we found out it was vinyl siding. So it looked new. The basement, first and second floors featured large casement windows on the alpha side. One was the entry door on the first floor, so there's only 2 windows, and then 3 above it. Very typical Midwestern urban building. I actually put in brackets here, like Archie Bunker's house when I first looked at the picture. You can see that porch or veranda in the front. You go up the stairs and then into the home. The rear of the home had a covered porch that also served as a stairway to the upper floors. There was a rear door directly to the basement, separate door, and another door that went to the rear porch on the first floor. The enclosed porch contained stairs, as I mentioned before. The house was in an urban area in the middle of a block of similar homes. The Bravo and Delta exposures were very close, approximately 6 feet apart just from looking at the pictures. There was no real side yard spaces between the homes. The Bravo exposure is a 2-story, and the Delta exposure was a 1.5-story, which was actually set back quite a ways from the street related to the other houses.
The interesting thing about this house was you rolled up on this and you didn't know it was a multi-occupancy. You wouldn't. It looked like a well-maintained house, single mailbox out front. You wouldn't have necessarily known there were a series of apartments in there.
Yeah, we were even quizzing our other hosts on the podcast last night, and they're all going, "Yeah, it just looked like a big house."
And
Single
likely it
family.
was when it was built. Interior stairway between the first and second floors. Anyway, we'll talk about the investigation. So this is out of the NIOSH investigation. And this is a very brief summary of what happened when this incident, when the crews arrived on scene. And this incident went very quickly, so there's not much here because it all happened within the first few minutes. So on November 2 of 2012, a 54-year-old male career captain sustained injuries at a 2.5-story apartment building fire and then later died at the hospital. At 17:16 hours, dark outside, dispatch called a still alarm for smoke in the area. So they didn't have an address. There was just smoke in the area. Battalion Chief 19 was the first to leave the station that was just a few blocks away, as mentioned earlier. He approached the fire district by driving behind it. There's a service alleyway behind. and then around to the front, arriving on scene at 17:17 hours. He reported a working fire with heavy smoke coming from the rear, which is the Charlie side, and from the front, the Alpha side of the structure's attic. So there were two peaks, roof peaks, a peak in the rear and a peak in the front with windows. Per fire department standard operating procedures, dispatch then initiated a RIT response, which brought, I think it's 24 members on scene. At 17:18 hours, Engine 123 arrived on scene, and Battalion Chief 19 was on scene. So these two were on scene, and had assumed incident command. The IC spoke with one of the occupants, who stated then that everybody was out. The IC then made entry through the front door on the first floor, and to the interior stairwell, and then went up to survey the interior of the second floor. He noticed only a light haze throughout and a glow around the Charlie side door at the back of the second floor. So that went out to the covered porch at the rear, where there was another set of stairs. The IC then came back to the front door and met the Engine 123 captain and a firefighter who was his pipe man. They had stretched a horseshoe load, which is 100 feet of 2.5-inch hose with a gated Y and 150 feet of 1.75-inch hose, and they stretched this to the second floor, which is a standard department hose lay for this type of occupancy. At 17:20 hours, Engine 49, Truck 33, and Tiller Ladder 39 arrived on scene. So the IC made entry to the first floor apartment. So he surveyed the second floor. He came back down to the first floor and then worked his way through to the Charlie side, where there was a door. And the door was in the back and opened into the covered porch area. When he opened this door, he noticed heavy fire in the covered porch and rear stairwell areas. Remember, the front door is open at this time. At 17:21 hours, the victim, who's the captain, and the firefighter were on the second floor, where they flaked out, charged, and then began advancing the hose line. So they had 150 feet of 1.75-inch line on the floor in this apartment charged, and were advancing the whole hose line down towards the rear door of the apartment on the Charlie side. Engine 49 crew had stretched a separate 2.5-inch hose line down the alley, which would be on the Bravo side, to the back of the building, to the Sector 3, where there's a central door that leads into the stairwell. The Truck 33 crew then set a ground ladder on the Bravo side. There's not a lot of space there, so I don't know how high that ground ladder was set, whether they managed to get to the second floor or not, but it would have been pretty steep. If you look at if you go to Google and look at it there, you can see there's not a lot of space, and you can see that in the pictures too. Anyway, so they set a ground ladder in Sector 2, don't know what window they went to, and then the tiller set up the aerial to the roof on the Bravo side. So the Truck 33 crew set a ground ladder on the Bravo side, and Tiller Ladder 39 set the aerial to the roof about a third of the way back on Sector Bravo. A Tiller Ladder 39 firefighter went to Sector 3 to check doors. He first went to the basement door, which he was unable to force open. Then he went to the first floor exterior enclosed porch door, which was unlocked. Then he entered the porch, and he opened it up. He stated that he noticed the fire light up in the stairwell because he'd opened the door at the bottom, and air was now rushing up. So clearly it was an oxygen-limited fire, it looks like. So then he went to the locked first door of the first floor apartment and kicked it in. He then proceeded to walk into the first floor, where the battalion chief had already been, and then saw no fire, and then he backed out. We don't know whether that door was left open, uncontrolled, or not. Yeah, the latch was broken because he kicked it in. At 17:23 hours, the IC radioed the captain that there was heavy fire in the covered porch on the Charlie side and in the attic area, and the Engine 49 was going to put water on the fire because Engine 49 had advanced to 2.5 to the rear. And they were going to put water through the the Charlie side attic window, but there was no acknowledgement from the captain. So that would be the captain of Engine 123. So Engine 49 proceeded to put water on the Sector 3 side through that window. The IC then returned out the front to his command post and donned his turnout gear. The lieutenant from...
This Sector 3 is Charlie side. Sorry. Chicago didn't use Alpha Bravo Charlie, and so we're trying to translate.
Sorry, did I say Sector 3? I did. I meant Charlie side. Rear.
I should
That's
have
all right.
changed it. rear.
Sometimes the words just come out of my mouth. The lieutenant from Tower Ladder 39 and a lieutenant and 2 firefighters from Squad 5, who was now on scene, and a Engine 123 firefighter paramedic were near the kitchen area on the second floor when they heard a loud commotion. So they were up behind Engine 123, who was advancing the line. They heard a loud commotion. Then the firefighter paramedic from Engine 123 heard the victim yell, "Get out of here." So the firefighter from Engine 123 felt the victim's air cylinder and noticed it was hot. I don't know how he noticed that with his gloves on, but maybe he didn't have them on. Also, he felt a mask that was dangling and thought it was the captain's, but it was actually the Engine 123's pipe man who was tangled up with the captain. So the pipe man and the captain were tangled up in the hallway at the back of the apartment. And when you see the pictures and the floor plan, you'll understand why, because it was very tight quarters. The Engine 123 pipeman was on air and his facepiece had become dislodged while he was assisting the captain. The other firefighter from 123 had no radio, because remember, there weren't enough for everybody, and he couldn't locate the victim's radio, so he just started yelling "Mayday" as he tried to get the captain and the other crew member untangled. The Tower Ladder 39 lieutenant and Squad 5 firefighters, who were also in that hallway, heard the firefighter's verbal mayday, and the Squad 5 lieutenant tried to transmit a mayday, but there was heavy radio traffic going on at the time.
Of course, because they just got going and everybody's advancing lines and
laddering the roof, getting ready to ventilate.
Commander's getting his
lines
gear
to the
on.
rear.
I don't think the battalion chief had an aide, which maybe, and it doesn't actually get pointed out in the.
Like would have come with the van probably.
The victim's hose line was in the hallway and it had burst, but this is believed to have occurred during the thermal incident or post-incident. So it is not believed to have affected what happened, what precipitated it. They think it burst after from the radiant heat.
So there were 5 firefighters upstairs on the second floor at the rear, and with one line, but 5 guys, all jammed into the space that's up there. So there's a bit of a kitchen there. So I think that's was part of it. At 17:27 hours, the Tower Ladder 39 crew had just completed a first hole in the roof, which they made midway on the Delta side roof. So they went up and across the ridge line and came down the other side, and were punching a hole in the roof. And about midway down the building, and when they heard the mayday coming across the radio, the IC verified that a firefighter was down and called a mayday. Would have. I guess he just confirmed it with dispatch is what he did, and requested a 211 assignment, which is the second alarm. Dispatch initiated the 211 alarm. Squad 5 and other members on the second floor grabbed the captain and got him down the stairs. The Tower Ladder 39 crew, with the assistance from Truck 33 and Squad 5 firefighter, had just completed a second hole on the Delta side roof about a third of the way back when conditions suddenly got worse. At 17:29 hours, the roof ventilation crew was back in the aerial basket when they noticed the victim being brought out the front yard, the captain. The victim was non-responsive in the front yard, and CPR was initiated and was successful. The IC met the Aerial 19 crew and escorted them to the victim. Aerial 19 was the RIT guys, I believe. The revived victim was responsive at that time and talking to the paramedics as he was loaded into the ambulance. At 17:38 hours, the victim was transported to the local hospital. We had complications during airway management and then died. So there's no details on that, but I wonder if he might have had
I would suspect vomiting
thermal insult
or
or something,
embolism
maybe.
or thermal insult. Yep, airway swelled up. So the fire behavior, and that was a key factor in what happened here, because they had all the right pieces in place. They had lots of resources. They had hose lines. They had thermal imagers. They had radios. They had good staffing. They had command. According to the arson investigators' report, the fire originated in the attic and was accidental in nature. Remember, they had some mechanical systems up there. It's unknown how long the fire had burned before it was observed by residents on the second floor in the enclosed rear porch. Smoke pouring out the attic indicating the fire was in an advanced stage, was noticed by a person on the street corner west of the structure. He ran up and knocked on the door to let the residents know the structure was on fire. The residents immediately exited the structure. The developing fire burning in the attic void space was ventilation limited and produced a large volume of unburned products of combustion, incomplete combustion, and high pressure. The first arriving companies observed optically dark smoke from the 2.5-story apartment building coming from the front and rear attic windows. As the engine crew advanced the hose line to the second floor, Battalion Chief 19 searched the first floor and went to the rear of the structure and noticed fire in that enclosed porch area, as we already mentioned. Another engine crew advanced the hose line down the back alley to the exterior. Once to find the second floor rear door failed, the fire gases from the porch flowed into the hallway, which was on the second floor, which is where all the firefighters were. There were indicators of significant fire behavior. Dispatch had received multiple phone calls reporting the structure fire. First arriving crews could see smoke from blocks away prior to arriving. Battalion Chief 19 saw smoke pushing out the attic windows in the front and the rear. Battalion Chief went to the second floor, noticed a glow around the rear door to the porch. BC went back to the first floor to the rear porch and noticed the fire raining down in the enclosed porch area. Battalion Chief reports working fire and dispatch sends the RIT response to have more resources. Tower Ladder 39 firefighter opened the first floor doors, one on the interior, one on the exterior of the rear enclosed porch, and noticed the fire intensified up the stairwell, basically horizontal ventilation, up to the second floor. The second floor rear porch door fails.
That was a steel door, by the way.
The battalion chief called for an engine crew to the outside of Sector 3, which is Charlie's side with a 2.5-inch hose line, to hit the eaves and attic windows. So he's trying to get a knock from the outside before he can get to it. The truck company is in process of venting the roof on the Sector 4 side near Sector 3 with little smoke, and they hear the mayday over the radio. I'm not sure I'm in agreement with venting the roof in this case, but
attic fire.
That's my opinion.
Attic fire, top story fire. It's probably SOP for those guys.
Yeah. The Tower Ladder 39 crew, with assistance from Tower Ladder 33 and Squad 5 firefighter, cut a second hole in Sector 4 midway between the chimneys. Flames and black smoke came out of the second hole, and then they proceeded to back into the basket to get off the roof. Within minutes, the roof was totally involved in flames, and defensive operations were initiated. The NISC, National Institute of Standards and Technology, has developed a computerized fire model to aid in reconstructing the events of this fire, and it's available on the NIST website, which is www.nist.gov.fire, and you just got to type in Chicago 2012 and you can find it. The contributing factors: the modified building construction with multiple ceilings and a multi-story enclosed rear porch. Horizontal ventilation contributed to the rapid fire growth. We had that front door open and a 10-mile-an-hour wind.
And the back doors open on 2 levels.
Yep. This is fire behavior, slicers. Size up, locate the fire, control the flow path. Fire ground communications were a problem. They didn't have enough radios, and they were having trouble getting on the radio. Lack of proper personal protective equipment. He didn't have quite all his gear on. And lack of sprinkler system in a residential rental building. So multifamily residential, no sprinklers, which, I mean, face it, people, yes, we'd love to have it, but it's all over North America. We have these buildings.
But even the footprint of this building, it's 3 stories or less, you wouldn't need sprinklers even in a new construction.
I mean, there's many groups advocating it.
Couldn't disagree.
Because, yeah, exactly. But you're right, it's not code.
Great idea, though.
Recommendation number 1. Yeah, absolutely. Recommendation number 1, fire departments should ensure fireground operations are coordinated with consideration given to the effects of horizontal ventilation on ventilation-limited fires. So the fire, there's lots of fuel there. There's not enough air. As soon as it gets air, it's going to go. If you're not ready with water or able to put water on it, you may not be able to control the fire.
Or fully geared up either.
Wonderful... Really. Fully geared up. There's wonderful training on ULSFRI. All kinds of courses you can take online there. Exactly, the whole thing was designed for these fires. Many firefighters do not think of opening the front door or any exterior door as ventilation, but rather as forced entry to access and search and attack the fire. While entry is necessary, one must also realize that air is being fed to the fire through the open door, and there's little time before either the fire gets extinguished or it grows to an untenable condition exists, such as in this case, which jeopardizes the safety of everyone in the structure. Forcing entry has to be thought of as ventilation. It must trigger the thought that air is being fed to the fire. The problem is that the proper respect is not given to the fact that air is able to enter a structure by opening a door or cutting a hole, and can provide the missing piece of the fire triangle to a ventilation limited fire. I remember I've said this in several classes that I've taught before, is most of our firefighters today have not operated a wood stove. Therefore, they don't understand how the fire behaves if you have fuel and provide intake and exhaust. And that's why this max firebox and stuff, all these guys are going around the country doing training with that, just to, so people understand that if you have a hot fire and fuel, as soon as you give it air, it's going to
Hot
go.
gases rise, cold air comes in. So what
Yep.
was open on this fire? So the front door was open. They had a line in there, and firefighters coming and going. The first floor apartment front door was open because they were coming and going, and that's the same door. The second floor apartment at the top of the stairs, interior stairs, was open because there was a line going, so there was air coming in through there. They had the door at the bottom of the rear stairs on the Charlie Delta corner, whatever, that was open. They had the back door on the first floor entering into the rear stairwell, that was open or damaged, and they were in the process of cutting holes in the roof.
The attic window, fire coming out the attic
So
windows.
and they had fire coming out the attic windows, so there was self ventilation going on there. And then they were cutting holes in the roof. So basically, this building was, when they were first arriving, or the fire was reported, it was an oxygen limited fire. It was heavy smoke, probably a significant amount of heat, but it was more or less contained to the attic and the back stairs. When they started opening up the building, it was no longer that. It was basically uncontrolled fire is what was going on.
And I mean, think about what's most likely in the back porch of a building like this, right? They said they had fire dripping down from on the first floor from the second. So you're going to have the kids' big wheel toy bicycle. You're going to have some patio furniture. You're going to have, who knows, all kinds of really flammable stuff,
Yeah.
right?
Well, the back door, I think, was probably the primary entrance exit for the second floor tenants. Yeah. So
Right,
yeah,
because you couldn't go
they
in
would
through the
walk down
front.
the
Yeah,
alley and come in the back rather than walk through the ground
yeah.
floor apartment. So everything that you would have in your doorway at home was in the doorway of this place. And when that rear door to the second floor apartment failed, it was wide open into the second floor apartment, and it just exploded.
Blowtorch with today's modern fuel, which is solidified gasoline,
Yeah.
everything goes. The Underwriters Laboratories has conducted experiments that demonstrate the more ventilation openings that were made, the faster a fire room transitions to flashover. This demonstrates that even modestly furnished homes, fuel is not the limiting factor, and that more air will create more burning and less tenability. Ventilating near the seat of a fire can localize combustion and temperatures within the house. Ventilating remotely, which the attic windows and the front door, remotely from the seat of the fire, will create a flow path, which will expand the area available to burn and further decrease the tenability within the home. Allowing air to a ventilation limited fire low and letting hot gases out high can create prime conditions for flashover, even if in a large volume like a 2-story family room. More efficient ventilation can mean efficient air entrainment, which can lead to faster flashover times if water is not applied to in that shorter tenability window. And I mean, if you have to open the door to go in, great, but assign someone to door control. Close it so it's not as big to control how much air you're letting in until you can get the water on the fire and decrease the heat.
So recommendation 2. So after we read this recommendation, the discussion, we'll have to talk about this a little bit so we understand why this applies. So fire departments should ensure the incident commander communicates the strategy and the incident action plan to all members assigned to the incident. So part of the discussion in the report was when establishing command at an incident, one of the most important responsibilities of the IC is to develop a strategy and create an appropriate IAP, incident action plan. Based upon the initial size up, the incident commander has to absorb and process a lot of information in a very short period of time. Remember, he's doing his 360 and he's looking at all that, plus thinking about his resources. The incident commander develops a strategy which is defined as the overall plan that will be used to control the incident. Are we defensive, offensive, whatever. At this incident, Battalion Chief 19 arrived on scene prior to the arrival of the first due engine company. Remember, he drove around the back and then came back around the front, which was Engine 123. And then the other first due company was Tower Ladder 39. Battalion Chief 19 established command and then was able to develop a strategy and incident action plan based upon his size up of the incident. Command then went inside the fire structure and made a quick evaluation. Remember, he went to the second floor, looked in, went to the first floor, went to the back, looked out. Command told the victim that they met out on this, Command told the victim, who's the captain of Engine 123, that they needed to get on the second floor. There's nothing clear in this incident report here as to why the incident commanders told the captain that. Whether it was for exposure protection to stop the fire attack, we don't really know. Command then went to the Charlie side through the first floor apartment and noticed fire in the rear covered porch area. So he opened the rear door and looked out. This is the same door that is later forced entry by the other ladder company. He noticed fire in the rear covered porch area. The IC then radioed the Engine 123 captain that Engine 49 was going to put water on the fire from the exterior, try to do a reset from the exterior, but he never did receive an answer from the captain. He then instructed via radio for Engine 49 to hit the exterior attic window, but even then was unclear where Engine 123 was at the time due to no response from the captain. So there's a bit of an issue here where you've got a crew going in the front with a line, and you've got a heavier stream operating into the structure from the rear. So there's potential for opposing load lines, except it wasn't supposed to be directly into the...
In defense, the crew that went up the second floor had the wind at their back.
Yep.
They had lots of staffing.
Yep.
No one had instructed anybody to open the rear porch.
Right.
The engine at the back... that we know of. The engine at the back was instructed to spray water into the attic with their larger line. So those are all good tactics.
So far.
However, whoever opened the rear porch and the first floor, that's where the flow path got affected.
Yeah, got established. That's right. So at a fire, everyone has to know the strategy that's being implemented and understand their role by acknowledging via radio their position and acknowledging their role. Since Engine 123 captain did not acknowledge the radio transmission, it is unclear if he received or understood it. It may have moved into harm's way or already have been injured. So what they're saying here is that he may not have been aware of what other activities were going on around the fire ground that might have affected him. And what we don't know from this incident action plan was whether the IC had intended to communicate into the rear stairwell from the second floor or not, because the understanding could have been that once you open up that rear door, the fire then has access to the rest of the building. And whether they recognize that, I don't know.
And we have to give understanding. Remember, when I introduced this building, the building was 17 feet wide.
Yep.
It was long and narrow. And if you look at the pictures, which I'll put on our socials, it's a maze. It's 17 feet wide, 57 feet long. It's got a bedroom, a living room, a big dining room, kitchen area, 2 more bedrooms, a bathroom, and the rear porch. I mean, it is a maze to go through.
Yeah.
And there's nowhere to move.
Yeah. So in the Northeast, these long, narrow buildings are built on city blocks, right? Because the building is intended to go back half a block and get as many buildings on the block as you can. And commonly, they're what they call railroad flats, right? So you've got this, basically, you run from one room to the next all the way down through, or there's a continuous hallway down through. This floor plan doesn't look anything like that.
Nope.
It might have at one time been a continuous, nice hallway through, but clearly there's been a lot of renovations and the hallway doesn't have any straight sections to it that are of any length whatsoever. It just jinks back and forth all the way down.
Recommendation number 3 was the fire department should ensure the incident commander establishes stationary command post during the initial stages of the incident for effective incident management, which includes the use of a tactical worksheet, enhanced communications, and personnel accountability. This is what Denis calls motherhood and apple pie. I mean, you see this in a lot of reports. At this incident, poor BC-19 was completing his size up. He did a nice walkthrough. He told the guys what to do. He was putting his bunker gear on before the Mayday was called. The command post had not been established. Although he took the command from this incident, the permanent command post was not established until the command van arrived at 1723. So, I mean, this happened so fast. And I wanted to say that before I forgot to say, is like, hold on to your hats, guys, because this thing goes fast. They have lots of resources, got lots of firefighters there that want to do stuff. They're going to start doing stuff. And if you don't have that, now, why did he need his gear? He could have just sat in the truck. That's sort of my thing. He didn't need it. Shirt sleeves, got a heater and an air conditioner in the truck, but that's just how they run things there. Maybe, they want to put their gear on because it's a dark and stormy night and he wants to be outside.
It was cold. It was in the 40s.
Yeah, it was cool. So if you're going to be outside, you got to have gear on. Number 4, recommendations should ensure the use of risk management principles at all structure fires. Again, this is where they're going towards, the flow path. It's recognized firefighting is an intently inherent hazardous occupation. Risk management principles established by the fire service are based on philosophy. Greater risks will be assumed when there's lives to be saved. The level of acceptable risk is, to firefighters is much lower when only property is at stake. Interior offensive firefighting operations can increase the risk of traumatic injury and death of firefighters from structural collapse, burns, asphyxiation. In this incident, it was made clear by the second floor occupants that no civilians were in the building. When it's confirmed that there's no risk, the IC must then decide what risks they're willing to place their personnel in based on risk versus gain. Now, Denis and I had a discussion about this before we started recording, and he says, well, I think I would have sent the guys in. I was in there. It was a fightable fire. It looked reasonable from inside. They had a fire in the back porch. We'll get lots of water on this and we can knock it down, even though all the victims were out, the civilians. And I can't argue. It's like, you're right. It is a fire that you would most likely go in and try to fight. And things went downhill for various reasons that we've talked about. I don't think I'm going to go in depth in this one, although I will.
This was an occupied building.
It was, but they were out.
Yeah. So it's not a building with a big X on it. Firefighters don't enter. Not one of those. Not a derelict building.
Yeah. It's a lived-in home.
And looked well maintained.
The big difference here, and we're still trying to get firefighters to understand this, is the modern fireground is not like those of the past. Okay, we have to have increased technical knowledge of building construction. We've got a house here that was built in the late 1800s or 1900s, 1895, with real wood, but it's been renovated a million times. And therefore, that's a risk for the building construction. Heightened sensitivity to the fire behavior. It's going to have void spaces. It's going to have stuff you're not expecting. Structural stability is a thing.
Messed up interior.
Yeah, messed up interior and full of solidified gasoline, right? The first officer, as well as the IC, must make informed decision before and ongoing as to what to risk, people or property. Judgment will determine the risk profile for the incident. Many firefighters stand by the notion that all incidents are people events until proven otherwise. Historically, the fire service has a poor history of changing risk-taking strategies based on the people property issue. So it's not saying don't, it's just be aware of it, think of it. What is going to throw me a curveball in this fire? And what happened here was the weird layout of the second floor, and the flow path. All these things threw a curveball at this incident commander, and it cost the life of an experienced fire officer.
Yeah. So recommendation 5, and this is quite a pertinent one. Fire departments should ensure that proper personal protective equipment is worn. NFPA 1500 standard on fire department occupational and health programs states the fire department shall provide each member with protective clothing and protective equipment that is designed to provide protection from the hazards to which the member is likely to be exposed, in this case, structural firefighting, and that is suitable for the tasks that the member is expected to perform, interior firefighting. Protective clothing and protective equipment shall be used whenever a member is exposed or potentially exposed to the hazards for which the protective clothing and equipment is provided. In other words, you're in an IDLH atmosphere, wear your gear. In this incident, the victim was not wearing his hood, his balaclava, and he was not wearing both structural firefighting gloves. So why he had one glove off is unknown. Why he wasn't wearing his balaclava, that's not known either. And he received thermal injuries to both of those unprotected areas. So he received injuries around his head and he received injuries to at least one of his hands. He also received inhalation injuries, may have occurred when he was retreating from the sector.
Because he'd gone to the back.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
They located him in the middle.
Yeah.
So he turned around and came back.
Yeah. He was up there with his nozzle man, his pipe man. He got into trouble. He yelled out. The pipe man tried to get him and grab and get him out. The two of them got wound up together in a very tight space. And the other engine 123 firefighter went and helped to get them untangled and drag them out. So they dragged them out of this back alleyway, if I could call it that, hallway, into a wider space, kind of a kitchen area. So all this time, of course, the fire is just roaring in through the back door, which has failed at this time. And so whether he got his thermal injuries to his
airway,
thermal injuries to his airway initially, or as a result of being helped out, it doesn't really matter because it was probably fundamental in what happened to him later. Anyway, they dragged him out towards the kitchen, which possibly dislodged his facepiece along the way. So there was later noted there was a significant dent in the drywall at the corner. So in the middle of this hallway, there was also a very large space heater, looked like an oil burning space heater, sitting in the hallway in the corner. So it was a narrow hallway, and it was even narrower with the space heater sitting in the hallway. So it was a really tight area to have 5 firefighters trying to get through. And they suspect the dent in the wall was made by the victim when he was, they say in a panic, but anyway, when he was trying to retreat to the kitchen area. The pipeman's facepiece was dislodged as he was assisting the captain in retreating. Additionally, the IC then entered a potential initially, the IC entered a potential IDLH environment without proper PPE when he did his interior size up. If the conditions had drastically changed at that time while the IC was in the structure, the IC would have been at risk. So that's the battalion chief.
And I've done that. And Doug would, if he was on the call today, he'd remind me. We had a 3-story walk-up apartment building with smoke showing, couldn't find it. I pulled the fire alarm to get the people out, and I'm running around on all 3 floors looking for where the fire is, which turned out to be in a wall due to renovations on the first floor and had gone up to the second and third floor. I had my gear on, no SCBA, and I told the guys to rip the wall open because I felt it was hot there, and they ripped the wall open and fire jumps out, and what we didn't have, of course, was a hose line. I ran out to the balcony and said, "Get me a hose line now," and I didn't have a BA on. And Doug reminds me of that all the time, is because, or anything, we didn't have a can, we didn't have anything, because we've been looking for the fire for 10 minutes or something.
Well, I've done that before. I just held my breath and didn't breathe while I stuck my head in to look at something. So
right,
how many times have we done that?
Exactly. So we're all to blame here, and what it says is absolutely right. If this fire had flared up when the IC was in there because the door failed at that time, it could have resulted in fatal injuries to him as well.
But consider as our listeners now, if the captain hadn't been injured because he wasn't wearing his balaclava or wasn't wearing a glove and didn't get scorched and say, "God, I got to get out of here," and maybe dislodged his mask while that was going on and got a thermal burn to his airway, how would we be talking about this incident today? They might have come out with a melted, helmet or melted face mask or something, and maybe some reflective gear on their bunker gear, melted or something, and They had bailed out of there as the thing got out of control, and had a real conversation around the coffee later on that evening. But for the failure to be fully protected, this thing just escalated. And I suspect that the burn injuries to his airway is what was the complications later at the hospital.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
that led to, I think it was was his death essentially.
Because CPR, and to revive him from CPR on the scene talking, that is absolutely amazing. I was a medic for 6 years, full time, and I've never had that happen. So it was prompt CPR right away can work.
Yeah.
The problem was he couldn't breathe, and
But we should also be well aware that burn injuries are bad, but they get worse with time.
Right, exactly. By the time you get to the hospital,
you may be walking and talking, and then an hour later, you're no longer doing that.
Exactly. Yeah.
And your throat can swell up, and you can't breathe, and that's a problem.
Yeah. The next recommendation just says, ensure that communications are acknowledged and progress reports are relayed. NFPA, of course, Standard on Emergency Services Incident Management System, 1561, under emergency traffic, same as the podcast, to enable responders to be notified of emergency condition or situation when they're assigned to an area designated as immediately dangerous to life or health. At least one responder on each crew should be equipped with a portable radio, and each responder on the crew or company should be equipped with either portable radio or other means of electronic communication. They did say they were ordering more radios. They were coming. This is 2012. I've been in the same boat. It happens. The IC radioed the victim, Engine 49 would be operating outside Sector 3, the rear of the Charlie side, and intended to put a hose line into operation, but did not receive a reply, so they didn't get an answer back. Also, Tower Ladder 39 firefighter opened the first floor doors of the Charlie side and observed the fire accelerate in the rear stairway, but did not radio this observation to the incident commander. And I'll say it again, Doug's not here to fight me on it. Blue card. What is Blue Card? Blue Card teaches fire officers how to communicate on the fire ground and reduce radio traffic. Initially, it sounds like it's a lot more radio traffic, but actually I've taught the classes, and you do the scenarios for 3 days, and by the end of 3 days, there's open air on the radio, and you're working a major fire, in simulation. It does really clean up radio traffic, and it's a skill that needs to be practiced and rehearsed. Otherwise, you get the jumble on the radio.
Recommendation 7, fire departments should ensure that incident commanders are provided with aides to help manage information and manage communication. So a chief's aide, staff assistant, or field incident technician FIT is a position designed to assist an IC with various operational duties during the emergency incidents. The chief's aide is an essential element for effective incident management and for a successful outcome to the incident. The importance of having a chief aide assigned to a battalion chief is to ensure that the tasks associated with incident management can be initiated even before arrival on scene. The benefit of having a chief's aide is that the battalion chief can focus on radio communications, initiate the development of a strategy and tactics for the incident, and begin to develop an incident action plan. All key things as motherhood and apple pie, like it. Stuff you really should be doing. And in a situation like this where you're going into offensive, you got to be fast with these things. So anytime that you can, like for instance, if you had an aide driving him around the back, seeing the smoke and so forth, the battalion chief would have been, instead of focusing on driving, which was a dead end alley, by the way, and turning around and coming back out, he could have been focusing on, okay, we need, there's windows, there's doors, there's fire showing, there's multiple electric meters at the back. We know it's a multi, get back around to the front and divide up his forces, have his IEP ready to go. And so we don't know that he didn't do all this in his head, because they don't really get into this, but that's a lot for one guy to do. In this incident, the IC was managing fire tactics when the Mayday occurred. His priority then refocused on the victim, the captain. Chief's aide would have been valuable managing the tactical worksheet, maintaining personal accountability of all members operating at the incident. And remember, they had the crew on the second floor was made up of 3 different companies.
Yeah, they had 30-some resources there within 10 minutes.
Yeah. And anyway, keeping accountability of all members operating at the incident. and monitoring radio comms on the dispatch, command, and fireground channels. I don't even know if they split their comms into 2 or 3 channels or not, but I can't imagine they don't.
Although they said they couldn't get through on the radio, so the radio was busy.
Yeah. Well, you know how
Hope,
it's like in the first few minutes where you're just
yep,
getting
yep,
rolling.
absolutely.
Do this, I'm doing this, move on.
Yeah. Recommendation 8 talks about adequate staffing levels. NFPA 1710, of course, saying how much staffing they had to have. These guys were staffed up, although Tower Ladder 39 and Engine 49 were each riding 1 position short. A full complement of personnel would have provided 2 extra firefighters to aid in ongoing size up and to assess fire behavior. Also, they would have provided for more efficient search and fire suppression, respectively. So, although their staffing in Chicago is better than most places, so I can't slam them too much on that.
I'm not even sure it was a factor at this incident. I think this
Right.
incident went south very quickly as soon as they encountered any kind of serious heat, because the one member wasn't fully protected.
Yeah, I mean, it might have been complacency that the guy went and opened the rear door without being told to. We don't know if he was told to or not, who told him, so it doesn't address that. So,
yeah, or just part of their standard procedure.
Yeah, well, thank you for listening to another emergency traffic podcast. We hope that you get some little tidbits out of this that can help you in your service, and it helps us to pass the word around, and especially visit that ULFSRI and take some free training. I mean, what is it? You can't train enough for a job that's going to kill you, and this is definitely one of those instances potentially.
Yeah, and this is an incident that was serious fire, but it doesn't seem all that exceptional. Been to many of these fires, and you lost the building, you saved part of the building, whatever the case may be, and everybody went home afterwards dirty and lots of stuff to clean up. But this one went south, and sadly, a firefighter's lost his life, and he was a celebrated firefighter at that, well known in the department and well respected. Yep. And very sad to see this incident happen. But hopefully, there's stuff here for you guys, and
learn about slicers. Learn about slicers if you haven't heard of that one before.
Yeah,
it's just an acronym that people can use for attacking a fire.
Be careful every day.
All right, as Hill Street Blues, let's be careful out there.